Hi, I'm Rachel. I hope you're all doing well. I'll be talking about composition in this video. As an artist, I have a lot of trouble understanding how to use composition, so I'm using this research project as a good excuse to learn more about it. In the first part of the video, I'll be talking about what composition is. Then I'm going to talk about focal points and rules. And then at the end, I'll recap it all just in case if you missed anything. So please watch the whole video and don't forget to like, subscribe, and ring that notification bell. So first, let's talk about what composition is. Composition is how all the objects are arranged in an art piece. Composition is also used in many different art forms, such as photography, graphic design, web design, and other stuff. It's important because it organizes everything in our artwork, and it also influences what the reader focuses on. Without it, your artwork would basically be a mess. So, the area of the canvas you want viewers to focus on is called the focal point. The focal points are what give the painting meaning, and it's also the most important part of your painting. You can also have multiple points of interest. However, you should avoid giving your painting more than 3 focal points, as it will make your painting confusing. There are many ways to make your focal point stand out. Some methods you can use are contrast, implied lines, and placement. Contrast make the focal point pop out. An example of this will making the background dark and your object light, and vice versa. This can also be done with color, like making the background cool and your object warm. People's eyes are always drawn to the area with the most amount of contrast, which will hopefully be your focal point. Implied lines are also used to bring out your focal point. Implied lines aren't actually lines that are outright drawn, but they're created from other objects or space already in the piece. An example of implied line is if you have multiple objects in a line. There isn't really a line there, but your eyes still travel through the line of objects. Just like that example, you can use implied lines to help guide your reader's eyes to your focal point. Also remember that some implied lines can also be created with colors and textures. Even your border is considered an implied line. So the last method I'm going to talk about is placement. A common mistake that most new artists make is putting their focal point in the center of their canvas. Although it can work for some compositions, it isn't necessarily the best place to put your focal point. Sometimes it isn't used well, and the composition seems boring. If used correctly, however, a centered composition can make the focal point seem powerful. The symmetry created by this type of composition can either work with or against you. So some rules you can use for the placement of objects are the golden ratio and the rule of thirds. There are other guidelines and geometric ratios you can use, but these are one of the most common. The rule of thirds is where you divide the canvas into thirds horizontally and vertically. This divides the canvas into something that looks like a tic-tac board. Unlike a centered composition, the object of interest is off to the side rather than in the middle. You put the objects/people of interest on the intersections of the lines and the horizon on the line of thirds. The rule of thirds depicts more motion and shows off the background more as well. This is one of the most popular methods of organizing your canvas because it's easy and it just works, So the second rule I'm going to talk about is the golden ratio. The golden ratio is described by the Fibonacci sequence, as you can see I wrote down here. The Fibonacci sequence is used a lot in nature, so. So to make the golden ratio, you have to take a rectangle with the sides that are ratio of 1 to 1.618, and it's divided into a perfect square in a rectangle segment. The rectangle segment is then divided into another perfect square and another rectangle segment. And then that rectangle segment is divided into another perfect square and a rectangle segment. So it just goes on and on. So just like the rule of thirds, you put your objects of interest on the intersection of the lines or on the spiral line. You make the spiral line by making a curve from one corner of the square to the other corner of the square, and there's some examples here as well. Using the golden ratio makes your piece more aesthetically pleasing and balanced. But although I did call them rules, they're more like suggestions. It's okay to break some rules to make your piece work, as not all rules of composition work, so in some specific situations. So right now I'm going to recap what all the ideas I talked about using a recent drawing of mine. If you want to see a speed paint, click the link above. Self-promotion here. Okay. So the first thing I'm going to talk about is that I put the character one of the main focal points, like on the third. See right here. Then also I put the horizon on the top third here. Okay, now I'm so the three focal points here is this one, her face, and the body. So I think this is the main focal point because this has the most contrast out of these three ones, and also there are a lot of imply lines going to this focal point, such as this one and this one. So, and then so your eye goes directly here, and then your eye travels to her face, and then goes down the side, and it goes back to her, but it also goes up here to the body. And then after you look at the body, you go back here. So that is my logic here. That may or may not be flawed. So I think I'll wrap up the video now. If you want to learn more about composition, I put some links to some articles and videos I found helpful in the description. I hope you learned something new from this video. Thanks for sticking until the end of this video. Unless you skip some parts, then shame on you. Please like, subscribe, share, repost, retweet, rewatch.